welcome back to the Laura Show. I have a childhood friend, haven't seen in like 2 decades, maybe.
Probably, yeah.
Jessica Greasy, which is what I call you, but you now have a new name, Jessica Ridding.
That's right.
Ridding.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I guess that's what happens when we get married. Yeah. I am no longer Laura Tushy.
I can't believe that.
I am Laura Stewart. It is sad. We should reconsider taking these names of other people, for sure. But you're with me here today because I've been watching you from afar, you and your family from afar. We still know a lot of the same people. We're still in the same circles, but we just haven't really crossed paths. But you are the co-owner of Purple Hill Lavender Farm.
That's right,
which is an incredible place for anyone watching. Any Instagram people who are watching or listening, you need to go up there because this is the Instagrammable moment of all life. Oh. It's a beautiful, beautiful property with lavender growing everywhere. And it's just a beautiful place. It's about an hour and a half north of Toronto.
Yep.
In a little town called Creemore, just outside Creemore, which is, for us, very important because we grew up skiing. And when you grow up skiing, you drink a lot of Creemore beer, Creemore Springs beer, which happens to be from this little town. We actually have some of it here, but this is even cooler because this Creemore beer is laced, I'm going to say, with lavender. So we'll get into that a little bit. But thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I think that is one of the downfalls of social media is that we haven't actually connected, but I've been following your journey. You've been following me. So it's nice to actually reconnect in person after all this time.
I know. I got to say, you were already here in the studio when I pulled up and I was like a little nervous outside the door. I'm like, oh my God, like, why am I nervous? I'm seeing someone I haven't seen for years. And I brought some pictures. So Yash, you'll have to like edit the photos into this YouTube video because we look hilarious. They're embarrassing, but we have to show the people. Like we were on the same ski team.
I know.
Literally, I'm going to take us back to 1995, and the reason why I know it was 1995, not because of the photo, but because you and I were obsessed with Clueless.
Yes.
Like obsessed.
Oh my gosh.
With Clueless, the movie. Oh, and I remember you so well because we used to have sleepovers with our friend Drew, and we used to reenact Clueless. Now, of course, it was your house, and you had the fabulous closet, so you were Cher, if I'm getting this right. I felt like I was Dion of the group, which was like the cool hip chick.
Yeah.
And then I guess Drew was like the new girl, right? I don't remember her name.
You have an amazing memory.
Oh, no,
I forgot about that, but you're bringing back a lot
left a lasting impact on me, for sure. Because I couldn't even believe someone had a closet like yours. You had all these clothes, and I didn't have that growing up, which is hilarious because now I have like this big walk-in closet. It's more of a dressing room and all these things. But we used to have so much fun.
That's hilarious that you remember that because I was actually a bit of a tomboy growing up and lived in the country in Creemore, did a lot of sports, but I had an aunt who was a fashion journalist in London, England, and she used to send me the most fabulous things, so that became kind of our dress-up closet, like the boas, like in Clueless. That must have been where we got it from.
Yes, you had the most amazing things, and it's funny because I have driven by your farm for many, many years because we have a friend who had a grandmother who lives right on the same street. So I would be on that street, but I didn't know that was the house that I used to go to. I would drive by that farm and it didn't mean anything because
oh my gosh, you forget.
I was 10 and like, I don't know, I would get in the car, we'd leave the ski club, I'd get in your dad's car.
Busy chatting,
and I would end up at someone's house and I would sleep there and it was fun and then I would leave. But I didn't know where it was. So everyone's like, no, that's the farm. And I'm like, I thought it was a new farm you bought. And everyone's like, no, that's the same
the original, the original house. So you have a lot of memories in that house.
I do. And I was kind of stalking you the other day because you have like this big, I guess like kitchen area that's like a circular area?
It's a sunroom, so it's all glass and it looks out over the farm and it's a pretty special space. It's my favorite room in the house because in the middle of winter you can have the sun shining down on you and it just warms your heart.
Oh, I saw pictures and I was like, I remember that. I can remember that. So, you know, I feel like you and I lost touch a little bit. Obviously at one point your family, they stopped coming to the ski club. I feel like perhaps the reason behind that maybe we can touch on now because I feel like it's going to lead into a little bit of why the farm and everything. So can you kind of like why one year I just showed up and
it's a big part of our story and obviously traumatic because we were quite young at the time. I think I was 16 and my younger sister was 13, but my mom was diagnosed with cancer and ended up passing away sadly. So you know, we had been a really big ski family, but then kind of after that we were also getting ready to go to university, so life kind of pulls you in different directions anyway. But the journey from there was kind of, moving on to university, went to U of T. I worked for a long time in the city. But my sister and I both had this connection to this house that my parents built, my mom designed, and was really, the core source of so many of our amazing childhood memories that you were part of as well.
Yeah.
And we just kind of felt like that was our happy place, and we kept coming home every weekend, and that was, where we felt most at peace, calm, relaxed, happy. So.
And I guess they're in a way like, she's still obviously very present in that house and
exactly.
with you guys.
Yeah, and so much a part of the farm.
It was hard for us because it happens sometimes, right? Like you grow up with people, you see them every year. The thing with skiing, it's not like you see them throughout the year like school kids. It's it's
very seasonal.
Yeah, it's very seasonal. So all of a sudden one year you come back and everyone's like, oh no, did you hear? And obviously that made its way through the club, and it was very sad news for I think everybody.
Yeah.
For sure, because you guys were such a staple at the club, and then all of a sudden you were gone. But there's things in life, and you can't predict these things, and you never know, and you probably take these hardships, and you obviously they're near and dear to you, and you keep memories, but you also use them kind of to propel you forward and to make the most of it.
Exactly.
So I'm hoping you can kind of tell us, because was it a farm before? Were you growing anything on that land?
We weren't, but we did have horses. So my mom was a very avid horse rider. It was more than just a passion to her, and part of what we have done with the farm is the old structure that used to be our horse barn has been converted into our retail shop where we sell and make a lot of our products.
Okay.
So we didn't actually grow anything. A lot of the fields were just used as space for paddocks for our horses.
Yeah.
So when we started farming, we had to do a lot of tilling to kind of bring up the earth underneath and kind of fresh soil. And because we had never farmed anything, it was a lot of trial and error as well. We knew nothing about farming.
Why farming and why lavender?
Great question. So farming, I think it was something that kind of ties back to the property itself and kind of our source of love and happiness. And every time we came home from our busy corporate jobs, long hours in the city, it was almost started as this pipe dream of what can we do with the property? We love being here. This was pre-COVID, pre-remote work, so we felt like there was no option to do the work we were doing then in the country. So what can we do to create a business that we can do here and that also we can do together? And I remember my sister so clearly saying she wanted to start a peony farm. And it kind of seemed like such a far-off dream to learn how to grow flowers.
I don't think the average person is like, I'm going to start a farm.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when you have no experience doing it. Yeah. So she was the idea maker.
She was the idea maker. And she somehow managed to get us all on board. And we kind of started researching, and there had been some articles coming out about lavender and how much you can do with it, the therapeutic properties of lavender, because it really does help reduce stress and anxiety. And it happened that we were also going on a family trip to the south of France. And that obviously is a big source of lavender inspiration. And it kind of just kept snowballing from there. And it's obviously my dad's house, he still lives there, so he's also a big part of it too. So we got him on board, and it's just kind of continued to evolve and grow since then.
Okay, so we decide to farm, we decide to lavender. And what do you start with, like one shrub? Like when you say trial and error, is it kind of like we have to figure out what even grows on the soil? Do we have to put new soil down?
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, and I would say we probably bit off more than we could chew initially because we started with 3,000 plants. So we didn't just start with one or two.
The investment. And when you say planted, we're not talking seeds. Like you planted already mature.
Yeah, they call them plugs. So it's about 1 inch. So they're not mature plants. They're still kind of babies. And we had done a lot of research. We hired some consultants. There's a lot of lavender in the U.S., so we hired a consultant from there. We researched which would grow in our climate. And we started with 4 different varieties. And we just kind of figured out what worked and what didn't. We tried different things, pruning them at different times. We didn't do anything with the soil and no pesticides. We don't put anything on the plants. But it was more just about how to care for lavender and how to cut it at the right time, when to cut it, do you need to water it, all these things that you didn't even know you had to think about when you're growing
and
plants.
I wouldn't even suspect that Canadian soil, Ontario soil, was good for it. Like, I can't say I know any other lavender farms around. Maybe if anything, I would guess that they'd be like closer to Niagara on the Lake because it's a different climate there.
Yes.
But like, do we have good soil, or was this like?
We don't have great soil, especially where we are, because we are on the Niagara Escarpment, which has a really hard rock kind of clay soil, and lavender tends to do better in a really dry climate where it's really sandy, or gravel even, where it has really good drainage. But we have found some varieties that will still do well in our climate. They tend to more be an English variety of lavender. So we've just kind of focused on ones that kind of will still do well in our climate.
Are you the one out there pruning? Like, what's going on at the start? And maybe not today, but like, take us to that beginning part. Like, you're out there like researching stuff on the website, and then you're like literally pruning it with your sister and your dad and
pruning.
Family.
Yeah, it's a real family affair. We had a planting party when we had all of these plants arrive, so we kind of asked our friends and family to jump in and help us. And yeah, we were really doing the work from day one. Now we've tried to outsource more, and we have a big, amazing team of people behind us that really help things move. But yeah, it was really kind of getting your hands in the dirt, and it's amazing. Like, it's so therapeutic being in nature and having that opportunity to relax and the sun on your face and seeing something grow that you have cared for. It's really rewarding.
It's funny because I was checking out your website, and my company is called From the Ground Up Academy, my training company for realtors. And like, literally, you were like literally from the ground up is how you guys are doing this. And I agree with you. There's something so rewarding. I don't garden. I think all of my viewers and listeners know that about me. Like, I'm not a gardener. I'm not really much of a cook. But there is still something to doing something tactile with your hands, like whether it's painting or drawing. I like fashion and like that kind of creative side, putting things together. And I can imagine like being out in those fields, that smell. For me, lavender is probably one of my favorite scents, if not my favorite scent, because my mother, as a kid, she used to always put these little like sachets in my like drawers and in my closet. So lavender was always kind of around. So it's a very strong,
sentimental.
Yeah, very sentimental. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So I say interesting because so your sister's like, let's do a lavender farm. We're gonna sell the lavender as is, like we're gonna cut it and then send it to stores that sell plants. What was the thinking of how you'd make any money off of this?
Yes, so we kind of always had this vision of opening the farm up to visitors, transforming what used to be our horse barn that was starting to fall apart because it had been neglected for years, into this boutique where we could sell the products that we make on the farm. So sell our own lavender. And also part of that is looking at different revenue streams too. So how can we wholesale? Do we do different markets? How can we sell directly to consumers? So we kind of had a vision of being able to do all of those things, but it was very much one step at a time. Let's figure out how to grow the lavender. Let's see how that goes. Right. We had to undertake a big renovation at the barn to transform it. So it was very much like one step at a time, and we even still do that. We've started to kind of do different things on the farm. So we opened up to visitors after we had gotten that underway. Now we've done more experiences on the farm. So we do these picnics in the evenings where we set up tables right in the rows of the lavender. People get a charcuterie board, a Creemore Springs lavender sour.
You're painting like my favorite
you need
day
to come. Yes.
or experience of all time.
Yeah.
Those are all things that I love and want to do. And it's funny, my husband and I, we go to Niagara on the lake quite often, it's either for a day or 2 days or whatever. And we go to different vineyards. And he's always like, if I had a vineyard, like what would I do? And I'm always like, whatever you do, you need to have it something that's Instagrammable. Because people want to go to places that are just so beautiful. Yeah. And I have to tell you the story because it's just so funny to me. I was at Creemore buying this actually, and I was driving back to my husband's parents' place, drove down your farm road. Yeah. And there's these people in this purple BMW convertible car.
Yes.
So you already know where I'm going with this. And they're like in the middle of the road, like literally the middle of the road. And my husband and I, like my husband's born and raised just outside Creemore. So he's a country boy.
Yeah.
And I'm not from the city. I'm from the burbs, but like I'm not from the city. And we were just laughing. We're like, look at these stupid Toronto people. Like, what is going on? They're literally in the middle of a country road. There's people on the outside taking taking pictures. You know, they're reenacting something. And then last night,
I knew where you were going.
I am on my phone scrolling, and I happen to follow this person on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, ain't that funny? This woman is in a lavender farm. Yeah. And then I click, I'm like, oh, she's at Purple Hill Lavender Farm. And then I go next, and then I saw her, I'm like, I saw this happen. This is the chick. So I feel kind of bad because she actually is an influencer.
Yes.
So like now I give her a little bit more like, okay, girl, do your thing. But I just thought it was a really beautiful. Beautiful. And they had the table and everything in the lavender. So I can see why that's so beautiful. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it seems so genius, right? Like. But it's simple. It's like just make a great space, a great experience for people to come and share. So you guys were selling lavender at the start, or when did we start going into like? I imagine you sell soaps and you brought me some fragrance or some oil, things like that. Like, was that right away, or did that take time too?
Early on, because we knew we were going to create a store, so we needed to have products for the store. So early on, we did engage some experts to help us come up with different recipes and different types of products that we could make with the lavender, either with the buds or with the essential oil. So we started testing and trying out different things that we could make. And then we also had local businesses create some products for us too. And we had that all ready to go so that when we opened the store, we would have products that people could buy that were made at the farm or close by. And then we did a soft opening for friends and family in the community in 2019 with the idea of opening for a full season in 2020, which, as we all know, ended up being such a wild year for everybody.
Quite like opening a farm for people to experience.
Yes, as everything is closing down. So we were really kind of on the edge of our seats with what to do because we've been planning this for about 4 years of being able to finally open the farm. But luckily we were able to kind of contact different authorities and figure out that we were able to open because it's an outdoor venue. People were able to still social distance. It was actually amazing, the feedback that we got from people, because it was a lot of people who weren't able to get outside. They were stuck in their condos. Right.
You were their source of reprieve almost, like a place to go.
Yeah.
So it actually might have worked out well for you, although I'm sure at the start, lockdown wasn't like, what are we going to do?
Exactly. And, a lot of businesses didn't do well during that, so I feel badly saying that, but the feedback from people being able to have something that was a reprieve and feel like they could actually really enjoy being outside was pretty magical to experience.
Okay, so you did a couple collaborations with some shops and things around town, right? Everything local. This seems obvious because you're just outside Creemore, but I would never think to put lavender in beer. I don't know why I wouldn't think that because beer companies put everything in, like all sorts of things.
So many, yeah.
But when I thought of this, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. And I did buy it at Creemore, and I was pleasantly surprised.
It's nice, isn't it? It's very subtle.
So the taste is subtle, but the scent is quite, I don't want to say potent, but it's there, but in a great way.
Yes, yeah.
Like I'm like, oh, it smells strong, and then I taste it, I'm like, oh, it's not too lavender.
And you have to be careful with lavender because using too much of it can give it a soapy taste because it's so strong.
Right.
But yeah, they did a fabulous job. It tastes amazing. It was something that we had kind of approached them about early on in opening up the farm, and they were like, well, I think at the time they had a specialty brewery in Toronto that was in the financial district that had to be closed down due to COVID. So they weren't able to fit it in at the time because that was kind of the one area where they specialized in unique small batch products. But they were able to do it a couple of years later, which for us was amazing because it ended up coinciding with the picnics that we were launching. We were able to offer our guests an opportunity to taste it when they visited us. It's something you can only get at the brewery or at the farm. So
okay, so they're not selling it at the LCBO or anything like that.
No, it's very
that's so
exclusive
nice.
to Creedmoor, which is amazing. I
Right.
think it's so great. Like, people need to help each other, because I think that's the
Well,
best
it's such
way
a small town, and of
Yeah.
course, I think that's what's so charming about it. People love that kind of
Exactly.
small town feel.
Yeah.
A lot of people go up, obviously, on the weekends, like all
Yes.
us city folk that leave the city and,
Yeah.
and go on up. But they should definitely go and try this if there's any
Yeah.
left. I mean, I imagine it's a finite.
Yes, they sold out in record time last year, so they did make more this year so that it would last through the season. So I believe they still have lots available.
Oh, lots. I was gonna say I'm like on liquid gold here because I bought these. What is that like? Like, do you just walk in and pitch something? You ask for a meeting? Were they open to it right away, or did you really have to sell yourselves for this?
So we had been working with the Creedmoor BIA anyway to kind of figure out different ways that we could support each other. Because during COVID, it was kind of a time where a lot of businesses were suffering. Creedmoor actually saw an influx of people coming to visit because we were also open. So it was really natural the way that we came together to help each other. And Creedmoor Springs is also part of the BIA. So the conversations just really came up organically from that. But being said, my sister and I both have a background in PR. So when we started doing the lavender farm, we knew that we had a specific skill set that we could bring towards marketing and the influencer relations and ways that we could kind of market ourselves. So I think having put the farm kind of on the map and on the radar of different brands has helped us get those partnerships maybe a little bit more easily.
Oh yeah, I can imagine PR at the, like, you know, people think like, I like farming, let me open it. Like, let me
Yes.
open a farm. I hear it a lot with certain professions, like naturopathic doctors, for example, dietitians. You know, you go to school for a very specific skill set, but no one actually really teaches you the business side of it.
Yeah, which is tough.
And farming, obviously, there's so much business
Yes.
involved in that.
Yeah.
I actually went to University of Guelph, so I know like that you can go to school and get educated on the
Yes.
business side of things.
Yeah.
But you know, it's not just as easy as like, oh, I'm going to plant some plants and hope that people come. It's how do
Yeah.
you get the word out? How do people
Yeah.
find out about it? From your guys' perspective, is it like now a full family business? Like, are husbands involved as well? Did we bring everybody into this, or?
Yes, they don't work for the farm full time, but we do try to bring them in as often as we can. We bring in the muscle, as we call it.
Yes, yeah.
But they're amazing, and it really is a family affair. So they chip in as much as they can. Even just with my sister and I, we both have 2 children each. So that's 4 children that are all under the age of 6. And summer is the busiest time for us. So a lot of time the husbands will kind of pick up on the childcare, which is a huge help to us so we can focus on the farm because it is such a short season. But everybody is involved. My dad, as I mentioned, is really involved, and even my sister's mother-in-law helps with making dried floral arrangements or new ideas for what to plant in our gardens. So yeah, it's amazing. No matter what, you'll encounter some family members when you visit us.
I imagine like as a father, like just, you know, my dad and my mom, they always want us around, right? They're always trying to think of ways that like maybe we should go on a trip together. Maybe
Yes.
we'll pay for that trip just so you guys come. Like whatever they can do to entice us
Yeah.
to hang out with them more. But now here your dad is like,
Oh, he loves
this
it.
kind of is incredible and something
Yeah.
that they actually wanted to do. But now I get to see my grandkids grow up and run outside.
Exactly. We're there every day.
Yeah, you're
So,
creating such really
yeah.
incredible memories.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. But on the flip side of that,
Mm-hmm.
working with family, I'm sure, isn't always all it's cracked up to be.
Oh yeah, there's definitely different opinions all the time. I think we
How do
do
you
a
guys
pretty
manage
good
that?
job managing it, to
Yeah.
be honest. My dad is a real entrepreneur, has been from day one. I know that we have that in common because both of our dads were lawyers as we were growing up.
Yeah.
And my dad was a lawyer in a small town, obviously, but he always had different side projects going on. So I think that's where we've inherited this sense of that entrepreneurial spirit and different ideas and being creative. And my sister and I, because we had similar interests and similar backgrounds in our career, we both come from a PR agency background, we tend to always be on the same page. I won't say always, but for the most part,
Gosh,
we're on the
I
same
actually thought the
page.
2 sisters would be the ones like at odds.
Yeah, it's usually us trying to convince our dad to do things. So
Right.
trying to get him on our page with doing something that's for the aesthetic or for the
Right. And he just sees that as a waste of money. You're like, no,
Yes.
trust me,
So
this
we're
is
like,
the thing.
exactly.
That
yeah.
everyone's going to want to stop and take the picture in front of and hold up Creamore traffic for.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so do you guys have it where it's like, okay, well, if two of us feel away, then something moves forward? Do we have to get everybody on board to move something forward? Like, is there a rule that you guys play by, or is it no?
We try to keep it democratic, but sometimes my sister and I will make the executive decision because and then you know what, we all kind of laugh about it at the end of the day. We have this joke, so one of the things we have at the farm is a giant purple Muskoka chair, and this is one of the inside jokes because we really fought my dad tooth and nail to not have this because we didn't.
You guys didn't want the
we
Muskoka
didn't
chair.
Want it. No.
I thought you would have because that's the Instagram thing. Everyone
But we
wants to
thought
sit
it
on
was like a little bit of a tourist thing.
Yes.
Like, didn't really fit with the vibe we were going for. We thought we had convinced him. Countless discussions about it. Finally, he was like, okay, yeah, I agree. And then half an hour later, we came back and he had ordered it. So, sometimes people just make decisions, but we all try to laugh about it at the end of the day because the most important thing is as you mentioned, we're doing it together and we're having a lot of fun. And
sounds like the best of both worlds, but do you like the Muskoka chair now? Have you learned to like it?
I have learned to like it.
The tacky tourist Muskoka chair.
Our kids like it probably more than anybody. So it's become an ongoing joke.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. And you know what? You're right. Like, I think just in my I've owned now a business for 2 years. It's not like I've been doing this for a long time, but you do realize that a lot of your thinking about entrepreneurship ahead of time is very romantic about it. Like you think it's going to be great. Like I can imagine this story, right? Like your sister's like, we're going to have a lavender farm. It's going to be amazing. We're just going to be like picking lavender and laughing.
Yes, frolicking in the fields.
Frolicking in the fields in our beautiful white dresses.
Exactly.
With, with not an ounce of dirt on us.
Yeah.
But it's never that way.
No, and you don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that goes on behind the scenes to get it to look as it does.
Yeah.
And
it's like the duck, right? We all think like it looks good on the surface, but underneath it's like, holy shit, like we're trying to keep afloat. Is there any kind of like moments or things that have happened that you could share that you're like, this was a big struggle perhaps for us, or an obstacle that we had to get over, and maybe how you got over it? Because I do have a lot of small business owners who watch, and I just find, sometimes when you're at that low and you can't even see how you might get out,
it's tough.
You need that kind of perseverance. So anything that any advice?
Yeah, and I think that being a small business owner, as you mentioned, it requires so much grit and determination and perseverance, and sometimes you have to just keep trucking along even when it seems like a bit gloomy. And I think that we've gone through struggles that most small businesses go through, where you're wearing so many different hats, you're trying to juggle all the balls in the air at all times, and also grow the business and also invest but continue to keep it profitable. I think we've gone through all of that and still continue to do so. I think we have some probably very specific challenges for us because we are a business that's so seasonal. We are open for such a short time, so we try to pack in as much as we can in that short period of time. And that's something that we have also learned along the way, is because it is such a short season, we need to continue to evolve and do different things and reinvent yourself to kind of stay relevant and stay ahead. One of the challenges that we had this year, as I mentioned, with our picnics, they're beautiful. When you come in the evening and the sun is setting, the lavender just starts to glow. It's absolutely unbelievable. And obviously I'm biased, but
no, it really
I feel like
is.
the pictures don't do it justice, but it's so weather dependent. And this whole summer has been basically rain in the forecast almost daily.
Forest fires bringing smog or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So we've definitely had to battle the elements in a way that we didn't last year. And it can be discouraging when you have to cancel and reschedule, and you hate disappointing people because ultimately you want customers to have a great experience visiting the farm. So there were definitely some kind of challenges, but I think you have to just stay positive and take it as it rolls. And there were a couple that we went ahead with and didn't cancel because the weather had been kind of changing so drastically, and it ended up being a beautiful evening, even though it had been forecast rain. So sometimes you have to take a risk.
Right, and it works out. And hopefully, and I imagine not all your guests, but some of your guests are like, look, we know we were doing this outside.
Yes,
it is what it is, and they're kind of
exactly.
rolling with it as well. But it's not like you have like a whole, like you have the barn, or right, that has.
Yes, but it's small.
But it's small, so it's not like you can just bring it indoors, right? So
and
it's
that's also not the experience. Like people want to be in the field, so. Yeah, but to your point, a lot of people understand the weather is something you can't control. Farmers, outdoor events, you just kind of have to roll with it. And I think a lot of people do understand that, which helps us a lot.
Have you ever had a moment where, obviously this place has such sentimental value to you and your family, but now you've kind of opened it up to the world, and you want them to experiencing what you kind of experienced? Has that ever kind of been a mistake in your mind, or maybe not a mistake because that might be a harsh word, but kind of like we've now as a public have encroached on your very sacred space?
Yes, because it was a private property. Yeah, I think when we first kind of had this vision, we had friends that couldn't believe we were doing that, opening up kind of your private property to the public. But honestly, because we love it so much, and being able to see the enjoyment other people get out of it makes it worthwhile. And also because it is seasonal, it's not like that all year round. So you keep that in mind too, that the rest of the year we get it back to ourselves and private family home. But because it is so special during the time when we're in bloom and opening up to the public, it definitely makes it worthwhile. So yeah, there's been some considerations for sure, but I would say at the end of the day, we're happy that we did it.
I'm kind of curious too. So obviously you guys are quite on top of each other at all times.
Yes.
Always support from the spouses. Like I know you said they come in and chip in and help, but sometimes it's a little bit too much of the Greasley family.
I think they know what they signed up for when they joined the family, so they love it. They're very supportive. We've had our moments for sure.
Not that I'm trying to out them on the show, but like these are real things that people go through, right?
And also, when we started, I was still working a full-time job in the city, full-time hours, very demanding. I had 2 children during that time as well. So when I was on mat leave, I was juggling the farm and juggling a newborn. And I would say things definitely came to a head, at least for my relationship, when I went back to work the second time, because it was very busy. Now you have 2 small children that you're caring for. And I did make a decision at that point after a few months to kind of focus solely on the farm, because this was also in the winter time, and I worried about not being able to have time for my family, for my husband, and for the farm. So that was
plus
a
your
big
job.
decision.
Yeah, that's a lot to kind of juggle all at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That is a big decision.
It was.
I imagine you didn't come at that lightly.
No, and I loved my job, so it was a difficult decision to make, but I remember early in my career someone saying to me when they got a great opportunity, I'm not running away from something, I'm running to something. And that's kind of the point that I felt I was in. I was ready to kind of give it my all at the farm while still having a bit of a balance for my family. But yeah, it was really difficult because there's definitely so many parts of the job that I miss. But it was the right decision for me at the time.
My guess is though sometimes we think that we're leaving one career for another career, but there's so many things in life, or at least I found, because I've had so many different career experiences, that you kind of draw on these things that you learned at different places, right, that help you in your present place. So I can imagine for you, that's that.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's so busy in the summertime for us, but then we get to focus the rest of the year on our family too. So it's a bit of give and take all the time.
Definitely. I'm trying to think, when I think about starting something new, there's always this fear, this weight of the world perhaps is on your shoulders. Where do I get the financing from? Or if I have the financing, will it be okay?
Yeah.
Maybe we can, and I know we've kind of gone full circle, but take me back to the start a little bit if you don't mind, because some people watching, they haven't started the business, but they want to, right? It's like, I want to leave my job. I want to start something that's my own, but I'm not quite sure. Is there any advice that you would give for people like that? Where do they start?
Yeah. Well, and we started small. So it started as a real side project. So I was still working full time in the early days. And
were you self-financing this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was family finance, which we were lucky, and obviously we had the property in the family already, which would be a big part of the expense for our particular business. So we did have an opportunity to kind of start small and learn and try different things out and be able to grow. And then we did get to a point where it was like, okay, this is going to be something that we can focus on full time to be able to leave my full-time job. It was still scary. And with the current economic climate, it still is some days.
Right. I guess when you hear like murmurings of recession going on, you're not, most people don't think of, well, I'm never going to drop my trip to the lavender farm. Like that might be something that people think, maybe I don't need to do that this summer.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So it's always a risk, but I think if you follow your passion and you put your all into it, you've got to take the chance. And I'm so happy that I did, because it was definitely a scary decision to make, leaving a salaried position that, you know what your paycheck is going to be every 2 weeks, to then just being an entrepreneur and relying on kind of what the season is going to make. So it's a scary decision, but I would say the one tip is kind of follow your heart, because I know that sounds cliche, but I think it's
cliche because it's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Most of those cliches are true, at least at some point, right? I really appreciate you of course coming and sharing all this stuff. And my only real thing that I've kind of regretted over the years, because I've met with your sister, we kind of started meeting again, and
I've been
I was
following you.
And trust me, like if I had another chair, I would have had you both on it. We just like the set is only made for 2 people, and I felt like, although I might have known her more recently, you and I have such
memories.
history together at that particular farm.
Exactly.
And so I really wanted to bring you on and share. I'm so proud of what you guys have done.
Thank you.
And I'm like, that's my friend. I always like to support and cheer for my friends, even when like we haven't been that close lately, but certainly from afar. And you guys are like, I feel like you're living the dream, right? Doing something that you're passionate about, which you had mentioned, like if you love something, like lean into it, and like the rest kind of follows.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like the proof is in the pudding for you guys. Any last word of advice, piece, a strategy that you think might work for like the farmer that's watching, like anything that you want to share that I haven't touched on that you think, oh, this was a big part of the story, but we didn't kind of go there today?
Well, something I was thinking about actually on my drive down, as I mentioned, I was listening to some of your earlier podcasts, and I know you've had a lot of women on here, which I appreciate listening to, because you always need to get advice. We need to support one another, as you mentioned. And I know something that's come up in conversation is like, the appearance of looking like you have it all, which, really struck a chord with me, because that's something, leaving my job, I wanted to have it all. I wanted to have this side project and my full-time job and my beautiful family, and it's so difficult, and it's such a myth to have it all. But one thing that I have heard that has really resonated with me is you can have it all, but not all at once. And that's something that I try to remind myself of daily. And, we have just come off of a really busy summer season where my husband has been taking on the brunt of childcare. I feel like I haven't seen my kids that much, but I've been focusing on my career and my passion project, and I know the rest of the year will be time for family. So that's maybe one thing that I would share that I thought I could contribute to today's conversation, because I know it's come up on your other podcast.
Yes, it has. And, there's a certain theme that I think runs through a lot of things, and I'm always so dumbfounded where this, like, you can have it all kind of came from. I think it was a magazine. I might have done some research on this once, and like someone just put it out there, like, women, you can have it all, but like no one's telling men to have it all.
No.
Or there is assumption that they already have it,
or they don't want it,
or they don't want it. Like, what is all?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's peace of mind of like having it all looks different for different people.
Yes.
I think that's what I've kind of come to learn. Like, of course, when I was a kid growing up, I wanted to have a career, have money, have a family, have the golden retriever, because that was the dog that I grew up with, go to my ski club and like have this whole fairy tale, which is what I wanted. But I'm learning now as I get older, like it really isn't how things work all the time, and you don't always get everything that you want. And but you also realize sometimes like they're not what you need.
Yeah.
Right? And there's certain lessons.
Having it all looks different.
It looks different.
Yeah.
For each and every person. And so I feel like this conversation, like for women, our future women, we shouldn't even say it having it all, because it puts this idea in our minds that there is this having it all, and we should probably just kibosh it all together. I don't know if the guys in the room, like Nikki or like, has anyone ever said this to men? Like, do you have it all? Can you have it all?
Just do whatever you want.
Just do it. See,
I like that.
I think because men feel they can do whatever. And I will say this: I was just hanging out with a number of my friends, and their families and their kids, and you know, dinner time came around and the guys were drinking and the women were doing all the work around it, corralling children, feeding the children. And I was sitting there with no kids and I was like, oh my God, like, is that what it's like? Like, there's so much work involved. And so I think if you can find great partners, you can find amazing help. You're right. It doesn't have to be it all. It just has to kind of work for you, and whatever that is. It's different for everyone. So I appreciate that.
Well,
you closing off with that. Thanks again for coming.
I also wanted to say I'm so proud of you. My memory of you is like this petite girl with the largest personality, and you are still exactly the same, and you have used that strength to create this amazing platform. So thank you for having me today, because I think that what you're doing is amazing.
I appreciate that. And yes, I was short then, and I'm still short now. And my parents always say, you know, it's so funny because growing up, I guess I'd be upstairs doing stuff, and they would say it was literally like an elephant lived upstairs. They would say the amount of noise that was being created, and then you'd come down the stairs and boom, 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 and then they're like, and then this tiny little person would walk around. They were always like, we just don't know how this little person can make so much noise. I guess I overcompensated. I don't know what it was. I was like, well, if no one's going to pay attention to me because I'm down here, I'm going to make you pay attention to me. Same with the show. No one was going to give me a show, so I was like, damn it, I'm going to start my own show. So here we are. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And thanks you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.